okay, I'll wait a second.
Okay.
We'll give it a few minutes to let people get on. First thing I want to say, the support down here at the courthouse today has been amazing. The American Warrior Revolution, they have been amazing bringing people down here, getting the word out. We have lots of supporters that have come all over our nation, coming here to see the injustice inside this courtroom. We have had a lot of people upstairs. The courtroom was full, and that makes a big difference to our guys, how they feel their support is, and how the judge even acts inside the courtroom. Although we found today that it doesn't matter how many people are in there, she's going to do what she wants to do regardless.
Almost ready. Sorry.
We're going to give it a few more minutes to get some more people on here. Like I said, we appreciate all the amazing support. Bear with me. I usually have John here with me. And
we miss you, John.
We do miss you, John. Hope everything is okay and you're doing well. But I will do my best. Once again, we are down here in Las Vegas, Nevada. We are in day 1 of the actual trial, not including jury selection. We are starting with opening statements, and after lunch, they brought in, what is his name? Sheriff Lombardo. All right, you ready? No,
just
not
go
yet.
Ahead. It's freezing up.
It's free. It was doing that too.
Yeah. They know to go to you though.
So after we got back from lunch, another defendant decided that they needed to do their opening statement as well because we are still having issues getting our stuff in. So we're beginning with Leventhal's opening statement. Can you hear me? Can somebody tell me they can hear me all right? Okay, so Leventhal says, what I want you to tell you is there are no Bundys in this case, even though this is not a Bundy trial. There are 3 parts to the so-called Bundy case. 1 is the Bundys, 2 is the militia, and what we have here is these guys. You will hear about the Bundys and court orders. Not one of these guys know about it. Not one of these guys were here in 2014 was in a militia. They will show an email from Ryan Payne. They show the email. They circle that it goes to over 300 people. But none of those people were Eric Parker, Stephen Stewart, or Scott Drexler. He tells the jury to look hard at the evidence and to make sure that it links them to the defendants and the defendants alone. Because they like to put a lot of this evidence in and say, oh, Ryan Payne said this, and they definitely saw it. But they have no proof that these people saw it, and it doesn't go to them directly. So he said, please, jury, look at the evidence and look at it hard to make sure that it is actually linked to these defendants, that it is actually something that these defendants saw. Because I can tell you that Eric Parker, Stephen Stewart, and Scott Drexler did not know of Ryan Payne or of MOA. He said there's backstory. Drexler saw videos and images that made him go to Nevada, a place that he had never heard of. He did not come for cows, and he didn't care about cows. He's talking here, he can't bring up the videos or the images that he saw like we could in the last trial. They're not allowed to bring up the arrest of Dave Bundy where he was beat on the side of the road for taking pictures, and this is not in a closure area because the roads can't be closure areas. He's also talking about the image of the First Amendment area. That is the main reason Eric Parker, Stephen Stewart, and Scott Drexler went down to Nevada, because in America, we do not have a First Amendment area. We have a First Amendment.
That's right.
So it says Scott got here on the 12th, and then he went to the speech. And in the speech, the sheriff says that the BLM are ceasing operations and they're reopening the Gold Butte allotment. Then he puts up the picture of the prayer group, was the first to arrive down in the wash. And he shows the picture, and he circles areas. He says, there's no one on the bridge. There's no one in the abutments. We all know from last trial they're trying to say that they had set up militia there. He circles a man in a blue shirt, and he says, Dennis Michael Lynch, and is a gentleman right here, and he's recording. And then there's an objection. They said, Dennis Michael Lynch is subpoenaed by the defense, and he will be here. And he is going to testify that he came into the wash and asked BLM agents, are you really going to shoot these people? Immediately there was objection, and then a sidebar. That sidebar lasted maybe 30 minutes, possibly longer, as the observers and the jury just kind of sat there like, what's going on? Especially the longer it got going, everyone got more restless, kind of interested in what was going on. They come back and he cannot speak of that at all. While this is going on, Andrea Parker reads the Constitution to keep his mind off the injustice. The jury can't see it. He has to keep it below the bench, but he does that anytime so that he can keep his emotions in check and make sure that he's not getting too frustrated. Read about the true law. They come back and they say they will strike the Dennis Michael Lynch comment. He goes on to say that the evidence will show a complete disorganized mess. The BLM and police are going to testify that they were scared. And with thousands and thousands of photos and videos, look for the guns pointing at the people. Or at the officers. Look for the officers being scared. He said, when you see all this evidence, please try to find evidence that supports these things. The government is putting a protest on trial here. Then he goes to talk about Scott, that he's 47 with a beautiful daughter and a grandson. And that he's a regular American.
And the emails, too, that were sent to Scott Drexler. Or not sent to him. I'm sorry,
no, I already went through that. Okay, so the government calls Sheriff Lombardo, who is the undersheriff. He was the assistant sheriff at the time. They go through with him a little bit about his previous work with the police here in the Metro Police here in Las Vegas. He's been with them since 1988. He's been working his way up the ladder since then. He went to Bunkerville as protection for the sheriff who went to visit with Cliven Bundy. He went to tell Cliven that the BLM office had a cease and desist, and that they arrived at the stage area and there were 200 to 300 people. He stated that when he arrived there that the audience at the stage level area were calm, and that Cliven Bundy arrived in a Humvee with a caravan truck in front, truck behind full with militia or camo people. They shut yours off. He heard Cliven say that he can talk to you on the stage. He's saying that after the sheriff spoke, there was rejoicing from the crowd. But after Cliven spoke, there was anger from the crowd.
Yeah, the mood changed, he said.
They were providing security for Cliven, the men in the camo. And Cliven's speech was unrealistic and demands the crowd got louder. He also said they felt no fear from the law enforcement. The crowd felt no fear from the law enforcement. This is coming from Lombardo himself. The crowd felt no fear from law enforcement. Are they supposed to feel fear from law enforcement?
Objection.
Then they talk about after when the sheriff gets down, that's when the cowboys arrived, and that they had rifles, and that they were completely outnumbered because there was only 4 people, the sheriff, himself, and 2 others, and so they headed back. He then was given command of the Metro down at the ICP and went down to the ICP. Now he's given command of the Metro and Metro alone, not of the BLM and what they're doing. Let's see. When he got there, he set up the skirmish line and snipers. He testified to that. Skirmish line and snipers. The group continued to grow in size and about the size of the people at the stage area.
Back us up real quick on something the sheriff was saying too about the mood. Back to the mood of the crowd when he was there, because he had said some specifics as far as the crowd was changing, becoming emboldened, that they got louder and they were making derogatory remarks They had no fear of law enforcement, which you said that, but he went further to elaborate, making derogatory remarks when they were bringing up being a constitutional sheriff. We heard the video, and they said things like, you know, be constitutional, uphold the Constitution.
Do your job, do your job, and they called that derogatory. Okay.
Sorry, I just want to...
In the future, we can leave that to the end so that I can keep my flow going.
I'm sorry.
He believed that they were understaffed and they could not stop them because of the amount of people, and that they had firearms, and the officers did not have adequate gear to ward them off. He tried to find an informed leader after he set up the skirmish line. He went across and tried to find Dave Bundy and ask about his intent. Dave Bundy said he was there to get the cattle, and he told him that he could not control the crowd. Dave said he had an hour to figure this out with the cattle. Lombardo said he needed 8 hours to a few days, and the situation was becoming dire because people with guns were moving towards the gate. I would have liked to hear how he could see that from where he was at. He made a decision to release the cattle. So this is Lombardo saying he made the decision over the BLM to release the cattle. He did not know if their training or their experience was adequate in a group setting, and that if an accidental fire had happened, there would be bloodshed. And so he would need 500 officers. Once again, he's going to need 500 officers for 200 to 300 people, which at the last trial, what did we find out? Around 47 people had guns. So they need 500 officers to control a crowd of 200 to 300 people where 47 of those people had guns. So is anyone here really good with math? What is the percentage of the crowd that had guns? Because, you know, the prosecution liked to use percentages when they were talking jury. I know it's under a it's under a fourth. It's less than 10%. And they're going to need 500 officers to control a crowd of 200 to 300 people, with 47 of them having weapons.
And none of those people had the weapons pointed at the BLM. I was there. That's a crock of crap. And the crowd was scared of the BLM.
Less than 5%. We did the math. It's less than 5%. Threats were not against his police officers. He said once again, he gets to the wash. The threats, the people are not against the police officers. They are welcoming them. They're like, yes, we finally have actual law enforcement here to put the BLM in check. He also said again he was not confident in the BLM's training and tactics with crowd control, and he wanted to get them out first. Then they played the visit between Lombardo, Love, Dave, and Ryan. Love says that I cannot let you release the cattle. It is against the law, and I cannot approve you releasing the cattle. The talk was about giving Ryan and Dave a warning about releasing the cattle, and that they could be arrested at a later time. So here we have the conspiracy. This is proof of the conspiracy, but not the conspiracy of the protesters against the federal government, but the conspiracy against the federal government to get the Bundys to incriminate themselves. So here they're saying Lombardo said, release the cattle. And Dan Love said, no, we're going to go and make them release the cattle and tell them if you release the cattle, you can be arrested at a later date. The decision to release the cattle was based on how many supporters were there.
Yep.
Then they brought in another exhibit, a SWAT officer in standard gear. And then they asked, well, is that standard gear from BLM agents? And he said he cannot testify to that because he can only testify to Metro, which is nice. He's at least, you know, stating truth in here. The BLM eventually left the area and the cattle were released. He said, were you concerned for safety when the cattle were released? He said, yes, he was concerned for safety, and he was there for over 5 hours. Then we go into cross-examination. Tanasi gets up immediately and starts talking about men with radios, some having radios, some having communication, talking about the difference between the guys in camo. Do you have something to add to this? Because I was a little late. Okay. The camo to Tanasi's very beginning.
Because I have a lot more notes in between is what my problem is right now.
Okay. And Kwanzaa.
Oh yeah, I said that they were Kwanzaa. Oh, okay, I know where you are now. The camel and Kwanzaa related uniform. Kwanzaa, like they look like military but aren't, is what he was referring to. And so basically what they're trying to state right there and paint a picture of right there, is that citizens don't seem to, apparently it's a criminal act. It's kind of like the hat thing all over again.
Only the
Criminal act on
military
hiding
is
drugs.
allowed to have
Yep.
bulletproof vests
Or the BLM.
or tactical vests, even
Yep.
if they're not bulletproof, or camo.
Yeah, so
Only
if
the
you wear-
military can wear camo, and if you wear camo, you're going to be called quasi and militia, and it's a bad word, and it's negative.
And it also instigates that, because Cliven Bundy had security.
Private security.
Private security. So what, we're not allowed to have our own private security?
Politicians
What
can
about
have
our
private security,
Yeah.
but as American citizens, we are not allowed to hire private security, apparently, as they're portraying it in the courtroom.
There it is,
Let's go back. Okay. He asked if he saw Mr. Stewart, Parker, or Drexler or Loveland there. He said no, he didn't. Or he said, I cannot testify to that because he could or couldn't. There was, they talked about the SWAT and tac gear again, and there was objection and another sidebar. So here we are. First day, opening statements has taken half the day. We have had direct examination from one witness, and we've had two sidebars that have almost taken up an hour of the court time. What are we doing in here? It's getting to be ridiculous.
Oh, but stay with us.
The
people,
other
'cause it gets
thing
worse.
is that before they used to do the sidebars, they would let the jury out of the courtroom, and us, the court observers, and the media could witness their arguments. And the media could then report on those arguments, and we could report on those arguments. Well, they don't want us up in there. They don't want us allowed to see what they're arguing behind in the sidebars, so they changed their tactics. I believe that this is the reason the last day of jury selection, I was singled out and harassed and told that if I do anything in the courtroom, anything at all, including mouth things to the defendants or, smile at my husband, that I will be kicked out. Not for a day like they would the last trial, but for the entire duration of the trial. Let me mind you, I've only been spoken to one time the entire last trial. I have been as good as I possibly could be. And so that's exactly what they're trying to get the people out of the courtroom. They're trying to keep the media from the truth as well as the jurors. Okay. So then Tanasi goes back in. He says, you've decided to have SWAT regress. And he says, no. SWAT was put there to protect the inner perimeter. They have different levels of gear than regular police. Of course, that was objected to again. Yep. And then you have advised the SWAT team to regress. He said, no. Then he said, well, can I show you your prior testimony? And would that refresh your memory? He said, no, it wouldn't, but they showed him. They showed him his testimony from the last statement twice, from the last trial twice. And where he said that he had the SWAT team regress. He testified that he had the SWAT team regress because he didn't want to increase the situation and the aggression level by showing people in SWAT gear out there. That's why he didn't let his police officers put on their vests that they had in the vehicles with them. It was because they wanted to de-escalate the situation, not escalate the situation.
And this question was objected to multiple times, right? But he had to rephrase the question. He tried
over and over again.
And over.
They weren't going to do another sidebar after they had just finished twice.
Almost did.
But they were almost there. Then he comes back to, on the 12th, no arrests were made. Are the people, and then he asked, Tanasi asked, are the people supposed to fear the police officers? Of course, this was objected to again, and they weren't allowed to go on. Then Jess came in, talked about walking across the street with Dave Bundy for communication. Communication helps de-escalate things. That he met with Dave Bundy one time prior, and that he decided an hour and a half before meeting with David, he decided to let the cattle be released. That day was 15 minutes before the body footage of the meeting between Lombardo, Love, Dave, and Ryan Bundy. They tried to get this piece of evidence in that's a video of the what is that? Not the SWAT team. What is the skirmish line?
Skirmish line.
The skirmish line coming across the street to talk with Dave Bundy with Lombardo. He's there. He's testifying it's fair and accurate. They won't let it in. That's what the big sidebar was about. And so here we are. He watched it for a while. We're all saying, well, they're talking about this. They're discussing what's going on in this video, but we can't see the video. Jess starts to pull up the speech again, the speech on the stage. Ammon starts speaking. He welcomes the sheriff. He tells the crowd, you need to be respectful to the sheriff. You need to treat him with respect because he's an elected official and he has the authority of us. The judge stops him and says, why are you replaying this video? And Leventhal says, well, I've done this before. This is how we've done this, is we play it and we talk about, and I have my questions to the video. And she says, no, we've already seen the video. Ask your question. And if he doesn't remember, we'll watch the video again. So here, once again, we're seeing exactly what happened in Oregon. They have switched tactics. They're going back to, you will only see the evidence once, and then it's all verbal arguments. Once again, they go into the camel people arriving with Cliven, that they were, the crowd was calm, they got louder with celebration after Cliven. They talked about how the BLM was lined up at the gate, but no people were on the bridge. Leventhal asked this to Lombardo. He said, well, were there BLM lined up at that gate? And he said, yes, there were BLM lined up. And then he said, well, were there people on the bridge? And he went back and forth. At first he said yes, and he said no. When you first got there, and you're arriving as all the protesters are arriving, were there people on the bridge? And he says no.
It appeared to me at first that Lombardo was even trying to avoid the question.
Lombardo was trying to avoid the question and kind of skirt around it, and he had to keep going back into that.
Rewording it, yep.
He says Love was in charge, that Lombardo was not in charge of the cattle operation until he decided to take it over. There was an objection to that. Was there anyone on the other side? Lombardo went across to talk to Dave Bundy and to try to de-escalate the situation. He asked, where was your other undersheriff? And he talked about in between post 1 and post 2. And he says, well, was he over there to de-escalate the situation on the BLM side? There was an objection to that. And the judge ruled that she did not see the relevance in it because there's nothing to de-escalate on the BLM side, because they can point weapons at you as American citizens for protesting, for objecting to what they're doing. They're allowed to point weapons at you, and they don't have anyone that they have to respond to about that. They have no authority over them that's going to say what you did was wrong, and we know that now. He said, you were not comfortable with the training experience the BLM had with groups and crowds. And he said, yes, because my training experience is that that's not the role of the BLM. Perez asked one question alone. Did you see Ricky Loveland? Then we go into the government's redirect. You were asked about accidental discharge. He said, yes. What other factors were you concerned about? Officers. Safety. So he said, Lombardo says, the officer safety, the safety of the Nevada Highway Patrol, and the safety of the BLM. If there had been a firefight. Then they asked the defendants if they wanted to cross-examine. They all said no. So the judge wasn't happy with that last question and how the government got that out. So she decided to ask her own question on the prosecutor's side. She decided to ask, well, you said you weren't worried about accidental discharge. Were you ever worried about intentional discharge? This is the judge asking a question that the prosecution asked, that Lombardo answered, and she didn't like the answer the way that came out, so she reworded the question herself and asked it. This is something that is unheard of. I have never seen it before. So then when she's done and she gets her question answered, obviously it was a yes, she asked the jury, hey jury, do you guys have any questions? Why don't you write them down on a piece of paper and hand them to the end? Don't write your number on them, but write them down on a piece of paper and ask them to the end. So here, once again, we have one witness, we have two sidebars that have gone on almost to an hour. We have one judge that is not happy with a question that the prosecution asked and got an answer to, so she decided to reword it herself and re-ask it, and now the jury is allowed to ask questions. What is going on here? Who is going to stand up and come down here and tell Judge Gloria Navarro that this is not okay? This is not how our judicial system works. This is not right. You know, it's not enough that they've made it so that we have no defense. We can't bring in the arrest of Dave Bundy. We can't bring in Margaret Houston being thrown to the ground and Ammon Bundy being tased and had attack dogs sicked on him. We can't bring in any problems that the BLM were pointing weapons and aggressing this situation from the very get-go. That's not enough. They have to stack the jury, and now they're going to make, the judge is going to ask her own questions for the prosecution, and we're going to make sure that the jury fully understands everything, which was totally stupid in this case because we've only had one witness. So all of the jury's questions, and mind you, there were quite a few of them, were about information that wouldn't even come in with this witness. Okay, so the first one was there was a reference made to a prior trial. And she says there are different hearings in criminal cases with multiple testimonies, and we're going to leave it at that. Lie.
That's it.
Number 2. Okay, so already what we see is the jury seeing right through this. Yep. Number 2. What was the operation before they decided to release? Was the plan to release the cattle or ship them out? Once again, she says that this person cannot testify to that, so that'll be a question to ask later on. They were also asking about the meaning of cease and desist, and that was they were stopping operations and they were to stop doing what they were doing. There's another, what is there a command relationship between the ICP structure present at the time and 2014? Also, this guy can't answer that question, so that's a question for later on. Number 4, and mind you, that jury person had multiple questions. That was multiple questions on one piece of paper. Number 4, did you know if their firearms were loaded? Lombardo was actually asked this question. He said, no, I do not know if their firearms were loaded. Number 5, what was the relationship between the Las Vegas Metro Police and the BLM? And he said the BLM had operational authority that they then relinquished when he decided to go in and take over. Now, we weren't able to get into why he decided to go in and take over. The BLM had incident command structure prior to the Metro being there, and that he was in a meeting prior to the 12th, that he knew about that structure, and that Saul Laurel was the main person, and Dan Love was under him, but Dan Love was the incident commander, and he was in charge the day of the 12th. That is all we have for today. We will be back again tomorrow at 9 a.m. where they will be bringing another witness. I wonder how many sidebars and jury questions and judge questions we will have tomorrow.
Anybody else have a question?
Anybody else here have something they want to say?
Anybody got a question?
Any questions?
Want to say something?
Did she, when the defense attorneys asked a question, did she say that was a stupid question? Did I hear that, or was that?
No.
Okay.
She did say, yeah, she did. It was a stupid question that he needed to reword it. She is, but she's always done that. No, she said that to the defendant, the defense. That their question was stupid, but she'll let him go ask it anyway.
Oh, now I know you're talking about. Yeah, that happened.
How can? Oh God.
Yeah, that did happen. I know exactly.
I know everyone down here is absolutely shocked. We have media that has sat in courtrooms before. They're absolutely shocked. We have lawyers that have sat in courtrooms before. They're absolutely shocked. People, you do not believe what is going on in the courtroom until you spend an hour upstairs. It's unbelievable, and we're also, you know, the courtroom's full. We've got our supporters on the prosecution side, which is amazing. Thank you for all the support. This has been huge. Once again, huge thank you to ACE and American Warrior Revolution and all the people that came down and supported us, because without this, our message is not getting out. Thank you to Doc over here for having me on his live stream the other night. Helping get our Adam Kokash for visiting inside the courtroom today. It's been amazing. We need to keep it up. Obviously, the stand event that we did the other night got the media in there, because there was a lot more media in there than there has been before.
Yep.
What I want to see is we want it kept up. We need people down here. We need people to see the injustice. We need people to be harassed by these marshals so they can write up and say, you know, I wasn't doing anything, and they're coming over to me and telling me you can't sigh, you can't go, you can't smile, you have to have a smile on your face, you can't have a piece of gum in your mouth. We need you here. We need you to see the injustice for yourself, because if it goes on without people seeing it, there's no hope.
And the sheriff not once said he was concerned about anybody but the officers. He never said.
That's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. So once again, Sheriff Lombardo, he says he was in fear of his officer's safety. He was in fear of Nevada Highway Patrol. He was in fear of the lives of the BLM. Guess what he didn't say he was in fear of? He wasn't in fear of the people's lives, of the protesters' lives. He didn't care about those 200 to 300 people. He didn't have any thoughts or any fears for the men, women, and children down in the wash, that they would be murdered like Ruby Ridge, like Waco. He's only in fear of his officers. But he also did say that the people were not in fear of the police. Like, are the people supposed to be in fear of the police? Is that the police today, nowadays? Is that the people are supposed to be in fear? Because this is coming from a sheriff himself. Now, I can say this, that I saw a difference between Lombardo's testimony today and last time, and that he was a lot more truthful. He answered some of those questions that were bad for the prosecution. Like, no, he didn't know if their guns were loaded or not. So I do have to commend him on that. Thank you, Lombardo, for speaking the truth up there. But you should have been concerned about the citizens, about we the people who elected you and put you in office. And I hope you take that home and think about that for next time.
Do you think that there's potential that that stunt they pulled today with the jury being able to ask questions, and then they did the sidebar where the judge went through the questions first? Do you think that might have anything to do with trying to find a way around getting a favored jury nullification for themselves or anything like that? I have a couple theories on that.
Very possibly.
Yeah.
Also, once they've opened this door, they can't shut it, because the jury now expects that after every witness, they're going to be allowed to ask their own questions. So, this could work in our favor too.
Or
as we saw, a couple of the questions were like, well, who's in command here? And they want to get to the bottom of this. And that encourages me, because that's exactly what a jury should be doing. Getting to the bottom and finding the truth. And that does encourage me, because the fourth branch of our government, we the people up in that jury room, want to know the truth, and they're sitting on that jury, and let's hope that they can get to it.
Amen.
All right, that's a place that he had never heard of. He did not come for cows, and he didn't care about cows. He's talking here, he can't bring up the videos or the images that he saw like we could in the last trial. They're not allowed to bring up the arrest of Dave Bundy, where he was beat on the side of the road for taking pictures. And this is not in a closure area, because the roads can't be closure areas. He's also talking about the image of the First Amendment area. That is the main reason Eric Parker, Stephen Stewart, and Scott Drexler went down to Nevada, because in America, we do not have a First Amendment area. We have a First Amendment.
That's right.
So it says Scott got here on the 12th, and then he went to the speech. And in the speech, the sheriff says that the BLM are ceasing operations. It's okay, I'll wait a second.
Okay.
We'll give it a few minutes to let people get on. First thing I want to say, the support down here at the courthouse today has been amazing. The American Warrior Revolution, they have been amazing bringing people down here, getting the word out. We have lots of supporters that have come all over our nation, coming here to see the injustice inside this courtroom. We have had a lot of people upstairs. The courtroom was full, and that makes a big difference to our guys, how they feel their support is, and how the judge even acts inside the courtroom. Although we found today that it doesn't matter how many people are in there, she's going to do what she wants to do regardless.
Almost ready. Sorry.
We're going to give it a few more minutes to get some more people on here. Like I said, we appreciate all the amazing support as well, because we are still having issues getting our stuff in. So we're beginning with Leventhal's opening statement. Can you hear me? Can somebody tell me they can hear me all right? Okay, so Leventhal says, what I want you to tell you is there are no Bundys in this case, even though this is not a Bundy trial. There are three parts to the so-called Bundy case. One is the Bundys, two is the militia, and what we have here is these guys. You will hear about the Bundys and court orders. Not one of these guys know about it. Not one of these guys were here in 2014 was in a militia. They will show an email from Ryan Payne. They show the email. They circle that it goes to over 300 people. But none of those people were Eric Parker, Stephen Stewart, or Scott Drexler. He tells the jury to look hard at the evidence and to make sure that it links them to the defendants and the defendants alone. Because they like to put a lot of this evidence in and say, oh, Ryan Payne said this, and they definitely saw it. But they have no proof that these people saw it, and it doesn't go to them directly. So he said, please, jury, look at the evidence and look at it hard to make sure that it is actually linked to these defendants, that it is actually something that these defendants saw. Because I can tell you that Eric Parker, Stephen Stewart, and Scott Drexler did not know of Ryan Payne or of MOA. He said there's backstory. Drexler saw videos and images that made him go to Nevada. Bear with me. I usually have John here with me. And
We miss you, John.
we do miss you, John. Hope everything is okay and you're doing well. But I will do my best. Once again, we are down here in Las Vegas, Nevada. We are in day 1 of the actual trial, not including jury selection. We are starting with opening statements, and after lunch, they brought in, what is his name? Sheriff Lombardo. All right, you ready? No, not yet.
Ahead. It's freezing up.
It was doing that too.
Yeah. They know to go to you though.
So after we got back from lunch, another defendant decided that they needed to do their opening statement